That's what makes Disney as special as they are, is that's the incredible attention to detail that they put into all of those touch points. We need to expand the product to be the overall experience, from the appearance of the facility to the quality of the product to the tone of voice of the employee. Every detail is either enhancing or detracting from the brand. So let's make sure those details say exactly what we want them to say.
What about culture?
As a leader, whatever you have to do, if you have to reprimand somebody, even if you have to fire somebody, when they walk out of that door, you make sure they walk out with their dignity. It's all about our people. If you really want a culture that, starts feeding on itself, that's how you do it.
Welcome to Crave, the IFDA Podcast. My name is Julian LeBlanc, your host for this series of great conversations with industry and non-industry leaders. The food industry is evolving rapidly, and so are its leadership challenges. Our mission with this IFDA Podcast is to help you stay ahead of the curve with fresh leadership insights and strategies. Before we get to today's guest, I'd like to recognize Cut and Dry, our sponsor for Crave. Cut and Dry is the nation's leading e-commerce platform, offering the seamless ability for distributors and their partner manufacturers to promote and sell more cases with our best-in-class operator user experience. So as I was preparing for this conversation on the weekend, I must say that my two daughters and my wife got very excited because we are uber Disney fans. Before 2020, we never missed a year, 12 years in a row. It was a bit of a ritual, if you want, in the LeBlanc household. And so suddenly they got involved in my preparation here. So some of the questions might come from my wife and my two daughters, Naomi and Rowan, that are passionate about UX, customer experiences, client experiences. And I can't think of a better guest than our friend Dennis Snow, that has spent 20 years formerly at Disney. Dennis is now the CEO of Snow & Associates. As a customer service expert and keynote speaker, Dennis's focus is to help clients achieve walk-through fire customer loyalty. I love that. Dennis is in the business of helping companies and individuals create magical customer experiences. So with that said, I have to start with Disney. So tell us a little bit about your background with Disney, and then we'll walk through what you're doing today and how we're going to have impact together, Dennis.
I started out as a teenager working on the rides. There used to be a ride here in Disney World called 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. It was a simulated submarine ride, and that's what I did. I was Captain Nemo. Still the greatest job I've ever had. So I started out working on the rides. It was going to be a 3-month job. And again, that's a very common story. I didn't know it was going to be a 20-year career. So then I got into management and was loving that, but I found that my love was really training. So there's a division called the Disney University, which is the training arm of the company. So I went over there and I ran that for a little while. And then we spun off a division called the Disney Institute, where companies would come down to benchmark. They still do it. The companies come down to benchmark with Disney on various topics. And then I decided to go out on my own. I hit that 20-year mark and I decided to go out on my own and start training and speaking and consulting. And so I've been doing that for 26 years now and loving every minute of it.
It's fantastic. So, well, first of all, I love that it all started as a kid. It's amazing how the journey's and then 20 years later and to this day. Now, I'm curious, before we get into it, do you still go to the park from time to time?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. We've had annual passes off and on. We've got a couple of grandkids, so we love going out there. But we also go out to Universal. We love Universal. They do a great job. So we kind of alternate between the two. But we do still have that special place in our hearts for Disney. And even the grandkids recognize how special that place is.
Fantastic. Well, look, I think the one thing as we start and we talk about the work that you're currently doing to help our listeners, the IFDA members, is sometimes people might say, well, Disney's got big budgets, or, Disney's in the game of fantasy and we're a restaurant, we're an operator, we're a distributor, we're a manufacturer. How would some of these companies, let's call them real world companies,
Right.
Disney,
Yeah.
how would they learn from them? How would they let's
Yeah.
talk.
Well, first of all, it's important to recognize Disney World is an operation, and so you think about all the things that it goes into running any business like a restaurant. The same things there. Okay. There's the hiring, there's the training, there's the ordering supplies, there's handling complaints, there's, all the things that any business deals with, they deal with too. But I think what makes it work is they look at the product as the entire experience. From the moment you start planning your vacation there to the moment you leave at the end of your vacation, everything in between is the product. So it's not just the rides. It's not just the shows. At a restaurant, it's not just the food. It's not just the beverage. My wife and I have our 44th anniversary coming up this Friday. And so
I said,
yeah, I just made dinner reservations. And so that's part of this restaurant experience, right? That from when we arrive and how we're greeted to, the time we pay the bill and leave. All of that is we have to recognize as the experience. And I think that's what makes Disney as special as they are, is that's the incredible attention to detail that they put into all of those touch points. It's not just one or two, it's the whole thing. And I think that's where a lot of companies can really embrace that philosophy, is we need to expand the product to be the overall experience. And that actually goes back to Walt Disney's philosophy when they were building Disneyland. People complained about the price to get in back in 1955. It was $1.
Was it $1, Dennis? Was it?
Not anymore. It's not anymore.
No, it's not.
It was $1 to get in. And Walt, what his response to that was, he says, I'm not concerned about what people feel about the price going in. I'm concerned about the value they feel when they leave. And to me, that again is a key part of it. If we're giving more value than the cost, then people are typically going to come back. They're going to recommend. Now, again, price doesn't go away. We'd be kidding ourselves if we thought it did. But when you're providing value that exceeds the price, that's where the magic is, regardless of the business.
Well, it's interesting because you keep using the word experience, and I think words matter. And I think a lot of people, if they use customer service versus customer experience,
then it started going to a customer experience, and I started, it's the same thing. But then I realized, no, it is not.
Oh,
it is not, because what I found early on was two things. People equated customer service with a department. The customer service, that's where you call to complain about stuff. That it's in a lot of companies, it's a department. So that's one issue. The other thing is a lot of people thought it was just the interaction, when in really, the experience, the customer experience is all encompassing. And so I got into it pretty soon. At first I was a naysayer, but then I thought more about it. I thought, no, they're absolutely right. Because it's every single thing that impacts the customer.
Fantastic. And so you get a very unique vantage point peek under the tent, because you get to see what world-class looks like with some of your clients. And
I was very lucky, yeah.
and probably some clients that you work with today that are a bit lost, or they're looking for these 1% better gains.
Right.
Do you have stories that jump out in terms of something really good, maybe unexpected, maybe for you as a consumer, or a company you've studied, and then maybe the flip side to that? Because sometimes we can learn from the good and the bad. So maybe just riff on a couple of stories.
Yeah. Well, my favorite stories are about little things. And I just had one not too long ago that I was on a business trip. I was presenting somewhere, and I was having dinner in a sports bar. It was a sports restaurant type of thing. And I'd ordered a hamburger and fries, which is, the least healthy thing that I can order when I'm on the road. I have every intentions of ordering a salad, but I end up ordering a cheeseburger. So I got it, and I was putting on ketchup, the squeezed ketchup bottle that's there. I was putting ketchup on my burger, and it made that empty ketchup bottle sound, and you probably got it in your head right now, that sound.
Totally.
Yeah. And instantaneously, the hostess who was walking by came over with a new bottle of ketchup. And she said, I heard the empty sound. And I thought, wow, to be that present, I didn't have to ask for a new bottle of ketchup. I didn't have to wait for my server to come over. She was present enough to hear the sound and came over with this, fresh bottle of ketchup for me. And that jumped out. I thought, okay, if she's paying that kind of attention to detail, she's paying attention to detail in everything else. So I mentioned it to the manager. I asked to see the manager and I said, this is a good thing. And when the manager came over, I said, I noticed this and I thought it was really good. And my hope is that in their next team meeting, that manager brought up that story, because through stories, that's how we perpetuate those kinds of things in our business. Because sometimes presenters like me, we use these huge, grandiose wow stories, which are great. But the magic is in those little things, if we do them consistently. Some friends of mine, I was visiting in Seattle, and they took me to this olive oil tasting, which I thought, you got to be kidding. I'll go to a wine tasting, but olive oil. Well, I didn't realize there are stores that specialize in olive oil and vinegar. So we went in and we did this tasting, and the gentleman who helped us was so passionate about olive oil that I got excited about it, and it was just the way he did the tastings. And this is why this tastes like this. He would mix the olive oil with the vinegar, and it was passion. It was his ability to get my wife and I excited about olive oil, where we purchased 6 bottles of olive that we had to have shipped back here to Orlando. But that's the value of passion. And again, it's just those little touches of teaching us something we didn't know before. In the case of the hostess at the restaurant, hearing the empty ketchup bottle sound, that's where I think we really differentiate ourselves. The product is always going to import, quality, price, always important. But people can duplicate quality and price for the most part, right? They can duplicate it. But where you can really make your business special is in how you treat people. And I think the secret to that, and we can get into this at any point, is as leaders, we have to build that into the culture. We have to recognize what those touch points are and where we can add those little bits of magic, using my Disney speak, those little bits of magic that make people go, wow, that was really good.
There's no real cost to it. It's a commitment. And, you might not have budgets to create the Disney Leadership Academy and maybe invest as much as Disney would. And if you've got the right leadership, the commitment, the consistency, you hire the right people. I think it's Richard Branson that once said, I can tell you how good your client experience is based on how you treat your employees.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's absolutely true. It is really hard to give a great customer experience if you're treated terribly by your company. And there's always going to be issues that come up, let's be in the real world. But the difference is when you can tell your leaders care about you, when you can tell that they really do want you to have a great experience as an employee. I think, again, that transfers into the customer experience.
You talk about this attitude of indifference. So you shared a great couple of examples of positive experiences. Is there examples that you've seen, it didn't go right? And maybe it's in a restaurant or maybe it's other, but.
Well, and the reason I talk about an attitude of indifference is I think and I'm going to use customer service here.
Right. Okay.
The enemy of great customer service isn't poor customer service. It's indifferent customer service. Poor customer service, we usually know when we've given that, when we've interacted with a customer and really screwed up with them, because they're going to complain about it. They're going to, we're going to know about it. The indifferent attitude, the indifferent experience, that's the enemy because we don't know we did it. We were just going through the motions. It wasn't bad, right? But we were just processing people. And that's a really key point, is when people feel processed, it's really hard for them to feel that loyalty factor. So everybody that's listening or watching, we've all gone into a business and interacted with an employee who delivered everything very robotically. They did the job. They pointed you down the right aisle. They rang up the sale. They did all of the key tasks. But when they make you feel like a task, that's where, again, it's not going to keep me from coming back, but it's not going to make me come back.
My favorite Disney story ever is, 10 years ago, we fly in, our luggage doesn't arrive. We come in late. We're staying in Animal Kingdom Lodge. My wife is crying. We've got 2 young kids. Without missing a beat, the person that greeted us and then her manager came, they opened the gift shop that was closed, got us some pajamas for the girls. We were okay, shorts and t-shirts, but took care of the girls. They each got a little teddy bear of some sort because it was Animal Kingdom Lodge. And it was just a complete wow. Now, someone had to make that decision, Dennis. So
yeah,
what's your thoughts around giving someone a budget? So for instance, if I'm the owner of a restaurant, do I give people $50 a day to wow people? Or is there thoughts around that? I know
there's a lot of opinions around that. And Disney doesn't have a budget like that. Yeah. What they do is they encourage people to do the right thing. Now, here's the thing. That front desk person could not unlock that gift shop, okay? Didn't have access to those things. They had to call a manager, right, to do that. So now there's already a built-in, I don't want to say filter, but a built-in accountability of, hey, let me call my manager and see what we can do for you.
Yes.
And the manager, of course, can do that, right? They can do that. So it's about getting our people to look for the opportunities. And it's not about giving away the farm. It's about what can we do to at least bring the person somewhat back to whole. So in a restaurant, and this is a common situation, and probably every restaurant does this, but there's a problem, something happens, and, let me comp your dessert. Let me comp your dessert for you. That's something that any employee should be able to do. Now, if they're comping every single person's dessert night after night, now we've got a problem. They're taking advantage. But you're going to know that. As the manager, you're going to know that. But when they do it, when there truly is a problem, we need to recognize, hey, you handled that perfectly. You did that just the way we should. I'm sure that manager and the reception person at the hotel, I'm sure they talked afterwards and said, wasn't that great that we did that? Kind of made their day after a negative situation. So I'm not a big believer in a budget. I'm a big believer in what can we do to make this person happy? And sometimes the answer is going to be nothing. Sometimes people, I don't care what you do. You can comp their flight home. They're not going to be happy. Those are just the ones that we love talking about those, but those are kind of unusual.
I heard a great interview with Jeff Bezos recently where he said Amazon wasn't built on what's going to change. It was built on what's not going to change. And I thought this was super interesting, Dennis. What he said is what's not going to change is people are going to wake up and want to pay more for a crappy product and they want to wait a month. What's going to change is how we get the product to them using AI, technology, robotics, which was super interesting to me. So what do you think's not going to change?
People will pay for value. If they feel that they got more than what they spent, I don't think that's going to change. I don't think it's going to change where if you make me feel valued, if you make me feel special, that's a differentiator. I don't think that's going to change. I think that will always be important to people when I feel that connection between you and me, I don't think that's going to change. Maybe the delivery of it will change. AI is the Wild West right now, so who knows? But I don't think that's going to change. And speaking of AI, I think we need to recognize that does not do away with the customer experience and adding that personal touch. We need to use AI to enhance that, not get rid of it. So I don't think that's going to change. And another thing that I think will remain the same is the importance of the leader in setting the tone for the organization. In whatever form that organization takes going forward, it's still going to take leadership to engage the people, to take the best of the best ideas and weave them into the process, to get our people involved. I don't think that's going to change either.
Well, look,
I asked you earlier if I could show a picture.
Oh, please do.
So I know that, some of you are just listening to this, so I'll describe what the picture is. But instead of, setting the tone, the photo that I'm going to share my screen in just a moment, it was from around 1955 and probably 1959, I'll say. And to me, it's my favorite Disney photo. Are you seeing that?
Oh, yes. Yes.
Now, first of all, that's Walt Disney, of course.
Of course.
But more importantly, for the sake of what we're talking about, he's picking up trash at Disneyland, which is one of the things that's expected of all cast members to this day, that if you see a piece of trash on the ground, you go over and pick it up and throw it away. Well, the way I like to think about it, again, it was probably around 1959. I like to think about this as there's a trainee with a trainer on Main Street, USA at Disneyland. And the trainer is talking about the importance of keeping Disneyland clean and all of that. And at that moment, they look over. Now, I don't know if this happened, right? But at that moment, they look over and there's Walt Disney picking up trash off the ground. That's setting the tone, right? I mean, it doesn't get any better than that. And to this day, that's part of the Disney culture, is if you see, as a cast member, an employee, if you see a piece of trash on the ground, you go over and pick it up and throw it away. And interestingly enough, the number one compliment that Disney World and Disneyland will get is how clean the park is. Well, the tone was set for that from day one. That, to me, is the role of the leader, is to have that kind of impact on the culture. And you can only have that kind of impact by what you do, right? By what you do and what you say. And so I don't think that's going to change going forward. We need to recognize people know what we value as leaders by what we're doing.
What's interesting, Dennis, you just reminded me. I remember the last time I was at, is it still called Hollywood Studios? I guess the Disney...
Disney Hollywood Studios.
Yeah, Hollywood Studio. And people were taking pictures next to the trash cans as well. So forget picking up the trash cans. They've done such a good job with the trash cans. Like they had one that looked like an ad or
right. Yeah. There, it's interesting. They have some very unique trash cans like that. Yeah. They also have trash cans everywhere, but they're designed to blend in. So you don't see one until you need one. And suddenly there it is. So that perpetuates the cleanliness. That encourages people to throw things away into a trash can. So trash cans, it sounds funny to say, but trash cans are a big deal at Disney. But, you go into a store and you see overflowing trash cans, or not long ago, I was in going through a fast food restaurant, and I was, or quick serve restaurant.
Look at you, terminology.
I know, I'm learning.
Yeah.
And I was in the drive-through, and I was waiting to pick up, I paid, and I was waiting to pick up my meal. And looking out the windshield, the doors to the dumpster area were open, and the dumpster was just overflowing with trash. And, it was, it looked bad. I'm waiting for my food. And for me, what that said was Backstage just came on stage, and so it began getting that mentality of These little details make it through. You probably remember, I don't know if you remember, but the presentation I did, I used a term called everything speaks.
Yes, I do.
That every detail is either enhancing your brand or detracting from the brand, from the appearance of the facility, to the quality of the product, to the tone of voice of the employee. Every detail is either enhancing or detracting from the brand. So let's make sure those details say exactly what we want them to say, because everything speaks.
I'd love to play off as leaders. We need to set the tone. What about culture?
Number one, we need to define what we want the customer experience to be. So one way of doing it, now there's a lot of ways to do that, but I'm going to talk about one way to do it. Bring your team together in a meeting or a series of meetings if you have a big team, whatever works. And this is the discussion. What do we want customers to say about their experience with us? What would we want them to say? And I say zero it in on three things, because that makes you focus on what's our differentiator. What do we want to be special about us? So focus in on three things, three unique things. So Disney's would be, it was a magical experience. They paid attention to every detail. They made us feel special. Those would be three things. Once you've got that, and we say, yeah, this is what's going to make us special, then what has to happen for our customers to say those three things about us? For each one, what has to happen? So now you're making it behavioral. So if Disney wants their people to say, or wants guests to say they paid attention to every detail, one of the logical things is we need to keep the place clean, which translates to a behavior of, you see a piece of trash on the ground, you go over and pick it up and throw it away. So that's the culture now, is the behaviors that you want associated with what we want our customers to say. So now we've got that. Now you take that and you build it into the onboarding process for new people that are coming into the organization. This is what we're all about. This is what we do to get our customers to say these three things. You build it into the communications, the ongoing. I say leaders, we need to be relentless in keeping that message in front of people through storytelling, things on the walls, customer letters that we get, meetings that we have. We need to be relentless. And then we need to build it into our accountability processes. So are we holding people accountable for those behaviors? Are we coaching people who aren't exhibiting those behaviors? And if it goes to a really negative situation, are we letting people go who will not exhibit those behaviors? Are we making those tough decisions? And on the other side of accountability is recognition. Are we recognizing and showing appreciation for people who are living these values? So it starts with identifying what we want the customer experience to really be, very specifically. And then are we hiring? I didn't mention hiring, reflecting those behaviors in the hiring process. So treating interviewees like you will want them to treat the customers. So the hiring process, onboarding process, ongoing communication and training and accountability. That's how you build the culture. Now, it takes time to do that, and you don't have to do it all at once. But if you really want a culture that, starts feeding on itself, that's how you do it.
I'll tell you, one of the things that I always am passionate and fascinated around is, if you're a distributor, how do you deliver that unexpected value, or how do you become a true business partner to these restaurants? And what you just described there, Dennis, imagine having a meeting where we don't talk about price and product, but we talk about the experience and we get clarity around defining that, because then together we might come up with better menu ideas, better themes for the restaurants, better incentives to reward the staff on a Thursday night when they're trying to, get the extra dessert or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
And I think you get the experience you deserve. So if you're an operator, you're a distributor, and you don't have clarity, the example I love to use, Dennis, is I'm a runner. But if I went running this morning, I didn't know if I was running a marathon or half marathon or 5K or 100 meter, I would hydrate differently. I would eat differently. I would maybe wear different shoes. So why is it that a lot of times we expect people to, hey, my client experience is not good enough and I want it to be better. And I love where you took us through that framework. It's very concise. Go through it. What a great meeting that would be.
When this is the greatest job title I've ever had. I was the supervisor of Fantasyland. That's a great title. And I was getting ready to give my first verbal reprimand to a cast member who was an attendance issue. And I was kind of excited about it, because it was my first verbal reprimand. And my manager said to me, "So you're getting ready to give a reprimand?" I said, "Yeah, I'm going to let him have it." And I was just sort of joking about it. I'm going to let him have it. And Bruce sat down across, and I'll never forget this. This was 1981 now. Bruce sat down across from me and he said, "As a leader, whatever you have to do, if you have to reprimand somebody, even if you have to fire somebody, when they walk out of that door, you make sure they walk out with their dignity." And that has stayed with me. It changed the way I was going to do it. I still had to give the reprimand, but it changed the way I was going to do it. And it has always been in the back of my mind that we need to treat our people with the respect that we want them to treat our customers with. And logically, we all kind of know it, but we don't always do it, for whatever reason. We're in a hurry, things are busy, whatever, whatever it may be. And so keeping that kind of philosophy in the back of my mind really made a difference throughout my leadership career at Disney. And so I think, the idea is it's all about our people.
That word dignity, you got me, because imagine having a culture that operates that way, that even we're having tough conversations, we're having courageous conversations, we're being held each other accountable, as you mentioned earlier in the pod, that we make sure people leave with their dignity when they leave the room, the restaurant, they leave the car. That is something to think about.
1981 that he said that, Joe. 1981. And I remember where I was sitting and where he was sitting when he said it.
You could only have one word on your t-shirt to describe who you are as a leader, Dennis. And I realize that you have good days and bad days like every leader.
Yep.
What's the word that you would choose? I realize that's not easy, but what word would you choose?
Well, I've never really thought about this, but based on our conversation, I'm going to say respect. Yeah, that's respect or dignity. Respect on the front, dignity on the back. Yeah.
You've nailed it. We end it there. Well, listen, Dennis, first of all, thank you for the generosity of your time, insights, questions. I know that this is going to get people huddle around some of these topics to say, hey, how does that apply to our business? And the framework you gave us is fantastic. Again, if I was a distributor and I wanted to add value to my operators, I would have a meeting around that framework and then say, let's reverse engineer that together and make sure that we've got the right training, the right mindset, and so forth.
Right. Yeah. Right on.
And look, I'd like to thank our listeners for investing time in themselves today in this conversation, and hopefully it leads to lots of key actions and items that you can bring back to your business. And of course, I got to mention our sponsor, Cut and Dry, because it's not possible if you don't have friends helping us out. And with that said, Dennis, a big thank you.
Pleasure.
And look forward to our next conversation, because I know there's going to be another one, whether it's on stage or here through the Zoom.
Well, I appreciate your time, and you asked amazing questions. So I've enjoyed every minute of this.
And my girls are going to look at me tonight when I say, hey, I got to talk to someone that worked at Disney. They're going to think I'm a superhero. We'll leave it there. Go get them, my friends. Until next time. Cheers.
This episode is brought to you by Cut and Dry, the only independently verified digital ordering platform that combines e-commerce, payments, and sales tools to help food service distributors sell over 10% more cases within a year. Here's the truth. E-commerce isn't just about going digital. It's about getting discovered. That's why, since 2009, Cut and Dry has led the industry in transforming your inventory into online custom apps that are easy to search, explore, and for your customers to uncover new products. Join us today at cutanddry.com.